So let's talk about the concept of list membership. And to do list membership, I want to do something. We have our grades, but now I want to associate student IDs with it. So A52, actually 54 is my example, not that it matters. And so we're assuming that each one of these grades belongs to a student, and then each one of these students has an associated ID. And we can say they're in parallel. So the A54 is 100, A52 is 97, C21 is 98, 96, and then the final one is 100 again. Because we don't have to just store numbers inside of lists. We can also store strings, not just integers, strings, doubles, even Booleans. We can store anything we want inside of a list. Many different data types. And so we have these student IDs now associated with grades. And while these IDs are not exactly like your student IDs, they're actually similar in that your student IDs actually start with a number before a letter and before it has some numbers. So we're basically using that. And we could access all the elements if we want to get the student ID for 0. Well, at the same time, we can grab the grade for 0. So we can grab their ID and their name, so we could do a lookup to assign grades. And the reason we had to use strings, by the way, for this and not just numbers is because of the letters, the alphanumerics makes it requires this to be a string. And because if you just try to put A54 in there without it, it would actually fail. So the alphanumeric requires we use a string. But a list can contain many different kinds of things, even at the same time, which is different than other languages. So here I have 2 integers and a double. I can also put a string in there. Technically speaking, I could put another list in here as well, but we're not going to talk about that much this quarter. And I'm certainly not going to talk about a list inside of a list today. So let's just add some more strings. And we can even add a Boolean value. So we can add all of those things to a list. And notice that they're all different. And we can then access the individual elements by passing its index, and it's going to return its value. So we can always put many different things in there, and we can just get it back out of its location, and we can mix and match multiple types in the same list. But something important is to check to see if something is inside of a list, right? Check to see whether we've added a special value inside of a list. So for example, if I have grades and I want to check to see if someone got a perfect score on the midterm, I want to look them up. In order to look up a grade, we use the in operator. So I want to look for perfect scores. It's going to be 100 in, and then the list name. And that's going to return a Boolean. This is going to return a Boolean value. So if I say 100 in grades, it tells me true. So it checks to see if the number 100 is inside of this grades list, and it finds it's actually in there twice, but it doesn't matter. It only finds the first one and tells us. Evaluates to Boolean, tells us if it's inside or not. What about we want to see someone failed? 0 in grades. Well, no one got a 0 and didn't find a 0, so it returned false. Or maybe you want to see if there's an ABC on the midterm. It checked that string against the numbers and it said, nope, none of those match. Do the same thing in our IDs. C21 in IDs. Well, yeah, it's right there. It's indexed there. But what about C20? Well, that's false. There's no C20 inside of our ID list. So there's another operator we can do. We can say C20 not in IDs. So the not in also is a Boolean. It's kind of the reverse of in. So if I say C20 in IDs, I get false, but if I say C20 not in IDs, I get a true. And that's equivalent to saying, using the not operator, saying C20 in IDs, but then not, it's going to reverse the Boolean value. So these two are actually equivalent. So it's essentially looking to see if it's in there. However, it returns true if it fails to find it. And we could do the same thing with our grades. 100 in grades is true. 100 not in grades is false because it actually is in there. So we should be able to find it. So we have this operator to check to see if something is in, so membership in a list. It allows us to look up to see if a value is inside of a list or if it's not inside of a list. So that's something that's actually pretty handy. Allows us to quickly just check and say, oh, is there something in there I can use? Or maybe we're looking up a particular name. Maybe I want to know if it's a certain student is in this class. I can quickly look it up.